So welcome to Lesson 4 in the Be Safe in Your Space for Preteens program. I'm Gary Simmons. Last week we examined how the power of physical expression influences the way in which people behave towards us. How troublemakers, or the concept of relative positioning to a troublemaker in a particular situation, is another subtle way to control a first encounter. What to say to a troublemaker, as well as when to say it and how. Distinguishing how we have a civilized veneer, as well as what I refer to as our primal self. We looked at the voice of authority, as well as the voice of emotion. We examined what comebacks are and how you can train your child to use them. We looked at how troublemakers often pretend to be nice and to even be your friend so they can secure a lead-in with the intention of getting you to let your guard down. We explored how to use the vocal shock technique. We examined what yin and yang is and how it's applied in everyday life. We looked at how to gain chi or energy and how to lose it. And we touched on how to respond to a troublemaker with the opposite energy. I just got some echo. Just bear with me, please. This week, we're going to explore some practical ways to become balanced by utilising the principle of yin and yang. How to discover a troublemaker's motivation and weakness. We'll explore how the ego can potentially be troublemaker number one or your greatest ally. We're also going to examine some strategies about coaching those kids who tend to get into trouble due to an overdeveloped need to be the centre of attention. We'll look at what you can do if your child may have the potential to become a troublemaker. How to coach your child to develop more friendships. How to coach your child to communicate in a positive and effective way to help build confidence and self-esteem. How to help your child appreciate the importance of empathy and how they can develop it. What is the carrot or the stick principle and how you can utilize it to help your child change difficult behavior. We'll look at some practical tips if your child is struggling with issues such as being excluded. And we'll look at how you can teach your kids how to compartmentalize their life and friends to help them have relationships with the people who enhance their life, not detract from it. So let's get started with Lesson 4. I mentioned at the start of Lesson 1 that some of the concepts, strategies and tactics within the Be Safe in Your Space program are quite technical, while others are basic common sense. As a responsible adult, you got to your stage in life by drawing on your experiences, your upbringing, education, by learning from your mistakes and from the guidance of your mentors. Consequently, you may already know of and actively use some of the tips and strategies that are within this program. However, for some people, they may not be aware that they know what they know until they hear something from an external source that resonates with them, such as from a program like this that makes them think, aha, yes, I know that, or I already do that. This is good because a program like this helps to link the knowledge you already have with some of the missing pieces that you may be lacking or have not thought about in this particular context. This can allow you to consolidate your valuable insights and knowledge so you're able to utilize it in a holistic way, as well as being able to pass it down to the next generation or two. So to begin with, I want to touch on some of the concepts that you're no doubt aware of and try to explain it within the framework of knowing how to be safe in your space. So when you are spending some quality time with your child, you can contribute to their social education and awareness by helping them gain some practical life skills that can also help to develop their emotional intelligence. Firstly, I'd now like to go back and revisit the concept of meditation that we touched on in Lesson 2 when we examined some breathing techniques. In particular, I'm referring to an informal everyday way of meditating that I refer to as being in a state of mindfulness, which is a lot less intense than the formal techniques that we previously looked at. The word mindfulness is another one of those terms that's bandied around a lot lately. When it comes to knowing how to be safe in your space, I'm referring to the concept of having the brain occupied on a relatively simple and immediate task that doesn't require much mental effort, which gives the subconscious and higher self a means to channel some influence into the conscious mind. Mindfulness is the key to unleashing creativity because it keeps those distracting random thoughts in check during everyday life. For example, good creative ideas often spring into my mind when I'm alone and driving a car for a prolonged period. If there's not a lot of traffic or obtrusive stimuli from the radio or music, I can become at one with the car. My random thoughts are suppressed from the relaxed concentration that's required for driving. The same can be said for a range of involving activities, hobbies or otherwise, such as cooking a gourmet meal, enjoying a relaxing bath, washing the car, walking, jogging, gardening, woodworking or painting, and so on. Unfortunately, the exact moment and amount of insight gained during an everyday activity is, of course, unpredictable. As we discussed, the object of using meditation and breathing techniques is a means to give the noisy, insecure, and egotistical part of the brain a chance to quieten down, so it's possible for the higher self to direct some intuition and guidance into our decision-making processes, especially when we need it the most in times of stress. The challenge is to help kids understand, appreciate, and utilize this technique. As we discussed last week, the first step in achieving this is to introduce them to the concept of yin and yang by getting them to understand simple dualities such as up and down, hot and cold, summer and winter, and so on. When they grasp this basic understanding, you can then help them to understand emotional dualities such as laughing and crying, happy and sad, mean and kind, stingy and generous. You'll find that once they get the hang of it, they'll become incredibly creative and insightful. From this stage, you can then start to elaborate the concept of qi, or energy. I should mention here that it's irrelevant what you call it: qi, energy, love, life force, positivity. The important thing is to understand the concept. Personally, I think the term qi sums up this concept nicely, so that's what I'll continue to call it within this program. However, I encourage you to use whatever term resonates with you. So, to explain it to a child, you could, for example, say, have you ever been feeling quite happy and then for no reason someone's mean to you and then you feel sad? You can then go on to explain, when we're happy, we're filled with qi, or good energy. And then when a person's mean, it tends to drain our qi away, which is why we feel sad. It's the same when we're tired. We have low qi. Then when we have a sleep, we wake up feeling really good because sleeping allows us to fill up with qi. If you think about it, we lose qi when we're too far in either yin or yang. For example, if you've been playing outside all day with your friends, when you come inside, you might feel still quite wound up and excited. And if mum and dad are trying to do something around the house, it may lead to trouble. Do you know what I mean? So to prevent this from happening, it may be a good idea to read for a while, watch a movie, get on the Xbox, or finish off your homework. This will help to balance you because it allows you to gain qi. Then on the opposite side, you might have been gaming for too long or watching too much TV or studying for hours on end, and you've become cranky or whingy. So by going outside on your bike or having a swim or doing something physical, you can get back in balance because an opposite activity will help you to gain qi. The reason this happens is because when you're doing an activity that makes you think, which you like, it's kind of like doing the power pause breathing that we do when we get upset, because it helps us to forget about whatever is draining our qi away. Once we understand why we are losing qi, it then begins to flow back into us. It's quite amazing how it works. Do you understand? Ensure that you come back to this conversation fairly regularly with the aim of encouraging the child to paraphrase the concept back to you so you're able to gauge how much they've grasped it. In my martial arts school, I instill on my team members who work with kids to master the art of disguising repetition. This is also relevant for helping your child know how to be safe in your space, because when you introduce and discuss conceptual topics such as this, it's best to do it in a low-key way in which the child doesn't realise that you're leading them into a discussion and in fact testing them on their command of this very important concept. Also, depending on the age of the child concerned, a conversation as abstract as this could go on for weeks or even months. So be patient, kind and persistent. In lesson 1, we also touched on how a lot of stress, insecurity, low self-esteem and a lack of resilience is derived from the internal struggle between the higher self and the ego, when the ego gets the upper hand. We've already discussed the higher self in detail. So now let's examine the issues surrounding our potential troublemaker. Number 1, the ego. As an adult, when we encounter a troublemaker in everyday life, it's common to hear a petulant, childlike voice inside our head piping up indignantly, "Why should I do that? I've got just as much right. She can't tell me what to do." These kinds of words come from our ego when it's feeling insecure. And for kids, this happens all the time because they haven't learned how to discern what an ego is, let alone know how to deal with it. Try and think of it this way. The ego's objective is to constantly try and make its presence felt. I know mine does it all the time. Simplistically speaking, the ego is only concerned with issues such as who likes us, how we appear to others, including what we look like, as well as how much acknowledgement and approval others give us. The ego detects real or imagined criticism. It has a constant monitor of our credibility ratings in the minds of others. Unlike the higher self, the ego is not a good planner or strategist. Generally, the ego is only concerned about the right now, in this present moment. It's the force behind our knee-jerk reactions. Another big problem about an insecure ego is that it can easily make us fearful about other people's reactions to an extent where we can limit or restrict the way in which we live or behave. For example, as a professional presenter, I enjoy working in front of cameras and live audiences. It gets my adrenaline pumping. At times over the years, I've been the MC at various talent shows. In this role, I had some interesting insights into the battles that most people who aspire to perform in public must endure with their egos before and during their act. Basically, a novice performer controlled by their ego will crash and burn on stage every time. Experienced performers have an ability to surrender themselves to an audience and to be totally in the moment with their music, drama, or humour. The more a performer can surrender themselves, the more compelling they are to watch, even if they make mistakes. This connection allows a performer to generously share their emotional energy, chi, experiences, and vulnerability without any blockages such as embarrassment, shame, or fear. Conversely, novice and less experienced performers have a completely different focus. Instead of being connected to an audience, they're focused on themselves. This blocks any passion, energy, or chi flowing from their heart to the audience. There's no real connection. So a novice performer becomes distracted as they listen to and judge their own performance, wondering how they're coming across, how they look, and how the audience might perceive them. An audience will never tolerate a performer who they perceive as not being totally focused on them. This makes the novice performer's doubts and fears become a self-fulfilling prophecy. They don't look good at the time when they want to look their best. Successful and talented performers may have ego issues to deal with in other areas of their life. Yet when the curtain comes up on the stage or when the cameras are rolling, they have the ability to control their ego and make that vital emotional connection with their audience. This is one reason why child performers can be so endearing. A young child has a relatively free ego that allows them to perform unabashedly from the heart. Undisciplined or naughty egos are the main reason why some people desperately need to be the centre of attention and to show off or be acknowledged, even if it means behaving badly, which we'll look at in more detail later. The more extreme a troublemaker or a bully behaves, the more they're exhibiting their insecurity and self-esteem problems. people with a penchant for bullying invariably have such a low self-esteem, they need their ego to be satisfied artificially by actively seeking out victims to maliciously degrade and humiliate so they can control and generate a submissive and emotional response. Getting the ego into shape begins by making a conscious decision to focus on other people rather than exclusively on yourself. The concept of becoming a student of human nature is very beneficial to help your child make their way into the world. It helps to raise their emotional intelligence, it develops sound social cues, and reduces the struggles and doubts around personal interactions and relationships. You can start this process by explaining how important it is to listen to what other people say so they can try to understand why people say what they do. In drama, actors, directors, and writers call this digging beneath the surface of a character as developing the subtext. In each and every scene of a drama or movie, a character behaves like they do in that story because of who they are and how they arrived at that particular point of time. For example, if a scene starts with a character walking through a door, as an audience, we have to know exactly what happened in the previous scene and the reason why the character has to walk in through the door. Otherwise, the story won't make sense. The character might look exhausted, scared, calm, beautiful, disheveled, or whatever is needed to drive the story forward. As an audience, the subtext is communicated to us indirectly, such as by the pain or amusement in the actor's eyes, their facial expressions, and the inflections of their voice. Drama with little or no subtext is uninteresting and boring. The concept of understanding a person's subtext as they navigate their way through situations or interactions is quite technical. However, it's a key component in knowing how to be safe in your space, because gaining insight into a troublemaker's subtext will make it easier to choose the most appropriate way of responding to them. Obviously, you have to start off very slowly introducing this concept to kids. To begin, look for some simple everyday life situations that you can use as a source for a discussion. For example, if someone's being mean, do you think they're happy or unhappy in their inside? I think they're unhappy. To make sure that people who are unhappy on the inside don't make us unhappy, it's important to understand why they're unhappy. So, who do you think is the meanest kid at school? Jessica. Use this as a lead-in to initiate a discussion about what Jessica actually does to be so mean and what the reasons might be for her doing so. Could it be a home life? Could it be how she looks or how she feels about herself? Could she be jealous about something? Ask questions about Jessica with the intention of working together to find clues to try and work out what her motivation or weakness is. Of course, though, the object of this exercise is not judge or make assumptions about Jessica. Rather, you're helping your child learn how to examine the cause of why Jessica is like she is, so your child can develop insight that allows them to gain confidence so they may respond to intimidating people in an appropriate way. As the great strategist General Sun Tzu said, know your opponent and you will never lose. Know yourself and you will always win. Teach your child to develop an ability to empathise with as many people as they can in this way, to discover their subtext or what makes them tick, especially those with opposing ideas, viewpoints and backgrounds. Reinforce how important it is to be non-judgmental about other people's beliefs. In our increasingly diverse society, it's critical for kids to realise that just because they listen to someone, it doesn't mean they have to agree with what that person says or believes. Another bonus of your child being a student of human nature and adept in the art of conversation will be that they'll become an interesting person to be around and will subsequently find it easier to make friends. I've noticed from teaching people of all ages, from all walks of life, that the vast majority of people crave attention or acknowledgement. In flamboyant people, this is easy to detect because they're direct in their need to be at the centre of attention. The challenge is to be able to discover how introverted people need to be satisfied. A lot of people and kids get themselves in trouble because of this need of their ego to be noticed, acknowledged, and praised. If we're honest, as people, we all love to be noticed in a positive way, acknowledged for our achievements, and praised for our efforts. However, for people who unconsciously try to force this response from others by constantly needing to be at the centre of attention, life can be tough. When a person is in harmony and secure, they don't need validation from others. They may like it, but they don't need it. I've observed in my 25-year career of coaching kids that this need to show off and be at the centre of attention, and in many cases becoming a bully, is based on a few common factors, such as feeling inadequate and needing a cover. This is when intelligent kids with a particularly low self-esteem, which they are adept at covering, tend to internally question their self-worth, and so they work extra hard to be noticed by doing outrageous things such as backflips off tables or daredevil stunts, either on skateboards, bikes, or by climbing high things. The motivation for this behaviour is that when people see their stunts, they're going to be amazed and talk about it, preferably on social media. This feeling or hope of being noticed and talked about is gratifying. Being insecure about their intelligence. Some kids who may have slipped through the cracks in the schooling system, who get poor marks or struggle to learn, can often feel bad about themselves and believe that they're stupid, which they cover by trying to be funny and making the people around them laugh. Typically, these are the kids who will be disturbing fellow students when there's an authority figure around, such as a teacher or a coach. The next one is being insecure about their physical prowess. Some kids may be overweight or have poor hand-eye coordination or poor fine and gross motor skills. These kids can try to cover their feelings of inadequacy by portraying themselves at being really smart or funny, and are often skilled at making witty quips at inappropriate times, causing laughter and gaining attention. The next commonality is being fearful. There's no doubt about it, some people and kids are really fearful by nature. This could include the fear of not being good enough, the fear of failing, the fear of looking stupid, the fear of being rejected. We all suffer from these fears to some extent. However, for some people and kids, this fear is deeply ingrained and can be covered with a false bravado or a whatever or I don't care kind of demeanour. Another commonality is not getting enough quality time with a positive role model. Kids need positive role models to look up to and aspire to be like. Ideally, kids need quality time with their parents. In particular, boys who spend a lot of time being around their mother need regular quality time with their dads or an equivalent substitute so they can learn how men behave and act. If they don't get the nurturing they need, they can be confused as to where their boundaries are, which can lead to constantly testing what they can get away with by acting out to draw attention from wherever they can get it. The next one is having an over-exaggerated superiority complex. Some people, and especially kids, can be extremely narcissistic, which tends to make them want to be right about everything and to never admit to a mistake or a fault, which can manifest as being argumentative, bombastic, and controlling. The first thing that needs to be taught to a child who has either one of these features or a combination of them, which manifests as showing off to an extent where they get into trouble, or if they show signs of being a bully and you're worried where it may lead to in the future, is to explain to them exactly what it is they're doing. For example, Susie, it's not okay being silly and showing off to the other kids like that. Can you imagine what it'd be like if everyone in the class started showing off? Could you imagine the noise? What would that be like? Nothing would get done. It would create chaos. Do you know what chaos is? Timmy, it's good having fun on your skateboard, but when you try to jump over big things or ride downstairs, that's showing off. People may watch you for a couple of minutes, but they're not thinking about how good you are. They're wondering if you're going to get hurt. Do you want people to think that? After that, it's important to begin teaching them this vital lesson. Do you know how during the day inside your head, you kind of hear a voice that says things like, what do I do next? Is that right? I can't. Who's looking? Where's Jessica? I'm hungry. How long before lunch? I wish I could wear lipstick. My skateboard needs new trucks. My hair is ugly. It's kind of the same voice you hear inside your mind when you read something. Basically, all people do this. We all tend to think about what we want, what we need to do, and what we like and don't like in nearly every single moment of the day, except when we're talking to other people. For the most part, because everyone's so busy and involved listening to their own voice, they don't tend to notice or care what others are doing if they show off. Their voice is thinking, me, 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 me. Then if you do something silly for a very short moment, they might think you for a second or two. Then they're straight back to thinking me, me, me. So it kind of goes like this. Are you ready? Me, 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 me. Oh, you. Me, 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 me. For that short moment when they think you, they're not thinking how wonderful you are, how clever you are. They're actually thinking how silly or annoying you are. Have you ever felt like this about anybody? Once you've made your child aware of this concept, go through some examples about what they were thinking when they saw their friends or siblings doing unusual or annoying things. Also, get them to examine their thoughts and feelings when you're out together and you come across an eccentric stranger. The idea is to see if they can relate to how they feel about the antics of other people to know how people in their life feel about their antics. Empathy is the key here. A good way to work through this is to teach your child on how to keep a conversation going without constantly having to put forward their own point of view. Get them to think of examples of how annoying it is when people do this. Explain how it's annoying because when people do this, it means they're not listening properly. Then give them a challenge of not speaking about or mentioning themselves for a whole day, except if someone asks them a specific question. Most people don't realize how much they crave this energy. So when you give it out freely, they want to be around you, which works wonders for developing a healthy self-esteem. Explain how when you give a person acknowledgement and attention in a genuine way, that it's sincere and from the heart, by not continually butting in with me, 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 you'll connect with that person and fill them with energy or chi. Go on to explain the concept of one-upmanship and to listen out for when people do this and to think how it makes them feel. Stress how important it is to be attentive to what a person is saying and to ask questions, because this will help promote an enthusiastic response from the people they interact with, so it's possible to get on with all types of people and not just the ones who are the same as you. The aim of this exercise is to learn about people from their perspective. Engage your child in conversations to distinguish which people they like to be around or who makes them feel good and explore why. Chances are it's because those people let them talk and ask them questions and are interested in them. It's very enlightening for you and your child to do some people watching together, because you can watch how people interact with each other and you can notice and discuss things such as who is being dominant and how they do it. The benefit of this awareness is that it allows you to quickly recognize and be aware when your own ego tries to manipulate you and when the people you meet in everyday life are being influenced by theirs. In a difficult situation, the experience gained from being an active people watcher can be all the edge that's needed for your child to control the troublemaker instead of the other way around. Consistently relating to people in the ways I've just described will eventually develop within your child an intuition that can detect when somebody is reacting from either their heart or from their ego. Explain to your child that when people speak excessively through their ego and not listening, they're not talking with you. They are in fact talking at you, which soon becomes annoying. And people who do this are not very nice to be around. Give them some examples of this because it's quite a fun exercise. Also, go on to say that everyone speaks through their ego sometimes, and that's okay. But those who are unaware of doing this tend to do it too much, which can be very annoying and not good for friendships. Reinforce to your child that when they do realize they're being driven by their ego, don't worry, it's not a bad trait, it's simply a human trait. It's also very important to bear in mind that the ego is vital to maintain the drive we need to be the best we can be. As a martial arts instructor, I find that my ego is an asset when I'm teaching because it fuels my passion and motivation. Also in life, when someone offers us the short end of the stick, our ego can give us the necessary strength and fortitude to be able to adequately deal with both our daily problems and life challenges. Tell them by being aware of their ego is a very good and powerful thing, and to not dwell on doubts and uncertainties about themselves, and trust that if they do their best to be the best person they can be, then they are. Living with a healthy ego and a high level of self-esteem generates a conscious and often unconscious good feeling within ourselves where we can be self-confident yet not unrealistic about our capabilities or qualities. If your child suffers from an ongoing state of self-doubt and anxiety or lacks confidence that regularly lasts for days or weeks, then the time to become proactive in changing this tendency is now. So get the conversation started. Knowledge is power, and this includes knowing how to manage and maintain your ego so it's a valuable asset to your life and not a major liability. After all, you can't be responsible for anybody else's. By teaching your child how they can relate to the world without being constantly ego-driven will really open up their life and confidence. Is it easy or is it a quick fix? No. As their coach and tactician, this will be a constant lesson for both the child and yourself. I often get approached by parents with kids of all ages who are very worried about their child becoming a bully. This is a difficult situation, and unfortunately there's no easy answers or solutions. Bullies are people who tend to have a power or influence over others who abuse their power. In the Be Safe in Your Space vernacular, they use their power for the forces of evil and not for good. I've noticed in young kids it's often the case of them having poor social cues. What I mean is that for the most part, they know it's wrong to touch, grab, push, hit or kick other kids. But when they're in the moment, they forget themselves and act out. Then when they get caught and get into trouble, they genuinely feel remorse until the next time and so on. As we've discussed, some people and kids have a strong desire and need to be the center of attention. As humans, we all tend to be introverts, extroverts, or somewhere in between. I must stress there's no right or wrong way to be. With kids, the challenge is to help introverted kids who actively try and be invisible to come out of their shell and interact, while the extroverted kids, as we've discussed, must learn that it's not okay for them to always dominate conversations, games, and groups. In most cases, it seems that it's the more extroverted kids who have the tendencies to be the bullies. I think this is due to the fact that they can get easy attention by being a bully. Also, some kids have an innate toughness about them. If this trait's unchecked or unexplored in a positive way, it may lead them to being a bully because, as we discussed in previous lessons, some of the more introverted kids can have a tangible sense of fear or apprehension about them, which can make an egotistical bully assume that they're superior, which leads them to start wielding their power and push the boundaries. Some bullies also have a deep-seated resentment that goes along the lines of, I'm feeling frustrated and angry about how I am and my situation, so by being mean to you, I can at least get some payback from the world. Also, statistics indicate that kids who have been bullied themselves by a sibling or who may have witnessed bullying or abusive behaviour at home may pay this trait forward. The bottom line is that the reasons for bullying are as many as they are diverse. A common problem for parents who find out their child is becoming a bully is to rant and rave at them and threaten them with dire consequences. This sort of solution is in fact a form of bullying itself. Parents who do this are in fact saying or demonstrating to the child, I have the power and control over you. And if you do this again, I will make you suffer and regret disobeying me. This tactic reinforces the concept that by being mean to people who I have power over leads me to getting what I want. Empathy is the key in coaching your child about why it's not okay to be a bully. Empathy must firstly come from you. For example, I know it must be frustrating when ABC happens at school. However, when you said that to Susie, it really made her upset. Can you see how she might feel that? What if someone who is older than you, like Jessica, said that to you or wouldn't let you play with the other kids? How would you feel? So although the question of how would you feel is the best way to get the discussion started, it will inevitably have to be asked over and over again. In the concept of restorative justice, perpetrators of crime are forced to hear in full detail how the impact of their crime has affected their victim and their family. If your child's a repeat offender, it may be appropriate to organise a meeting at the school where they come face to face with their victim, where they must acknowledge what they've done and apologise in a sincere way before making a commitment to the teachers, the child involved and you that they'll never do this or anything like this again. Which leads to the next critical concept in knowing how to be safe in your space, which I call the carrot or the stick principle. Using this principle is the skill of obtaining leverage over someone and offering either a pleasant incentive or an unpleasant deterrent as a motivation to do our bidding. This principle applies in varying degrees throughout life, such as at work, where promotion is used as a motivation and the prospect of a transfer or dismissal is punishment. Once again, in order to be safe in your space, this principle can only be applied for the forces of good, not evil. As I mentioned, in the case where your child is becoming a bully, you don't want to come down hard with all sorts of threats about what you'll do to them if they do this again. Instead, as we spoke about in Lesson 1, the child has to have a clear understanding about consequences, which must be diligently enforced. Namely, you tell them in a calm, matter-of-fact voice that this is the behaviour I expect from you, and if you break the following rules, these are the consequences. This is the stick. For example, next time this happens, I'll take you to the school and we'll organise a meeting with your teacher, as well as Johnny and his mum and dad, where you'll apologise. Then I'll take away your Xbox for one full weekend. If it happens again, we'll go back down to the school and we'll meet with the same people and you'll explain why you did or said what you said to Johnny or anyone else. Then there'll be no Xbox for a whole month. As well as that, you'll only be allowed to watch TV for 30 minutes at a time, and you'll have a lot more chores to do around the house, and your pocket money will be cut by half for a whole month. Do you understand how serious this is? Then you can offer the carrot. On the other hand, if you can demonstrate that you've learned from your mistake, and I get a good report at the next parent-teacher meeting about how you've improved, we're going to celebrate. Maybe we'll get you a new game for your Xbox, or we could go somewhere really cool like Wet n Wild. I really believe that we'll be celebrating, but you have to remember, whatever happens is going to be up to you. Do you understand? If you need any help or talk about this stuff, I want to help you. You're not alone here, okay? The carrot or the stick is a very effective strategy. In self-defense, this principle applies to being able to manipulate a troublemaker either directly or indirectly So they think the option of quietly leaving you alone will be in their best interest, as opposed to launching an attack. And we'll delve into this more in the next lesson. Police officers, school teachers, and people in authority are often experts in doing this. Many of the non-violent strategies within this program are based on creating this perception, which I said we'll explore next week. The last thing I'd like to talk to you about tonight is what you can do if your child is facing issues such as being excluded. Unfortunately, there's no magic wand to fix friendship issues for kids. They have to do it for themselves. Friendships are fickle and can wax and wane and change from week to week. It's just not possible for you to appreciate all the nuances of your child's social group. All you can do is support, encourage, and help your child think through the tactics and strategies that will help them either deal with or circumnavigate around the social issues that are worrying them. It's therefore absolutely vital to create a culture at home where a child's able to talk through their issues with you, no matter how awkward, painful, or difficult it is to listen to. As kids move into puberty and beyond, they typically only communicate with parents in monosyllabic grunts. Don't worry, it's just what they do. However, if you have a culture of communication at home, they will come to you when they feel they need to. A warning though, you have to be committed to talk through these issues with them whenever that might be, even if it's 2 a.m. or when the big game is about to kick off on TV. One of the biggest problems for a child who suffers being excluded is the fear of not having any friends and being regarded as an outcast. The main defense for this is for you to encourage your child to compartmentalize their social life by having a wide circle of friends from all the areas in their life, rather than just with the kids who they met by the coincidence of being at the same school. Whenever you can help your child foster relationships by organising play dates and sleepover with kids from scouts, martial arts training, music, soccer, football, swimming, or any extracurricular activity that they're involved in, so if things go wrong with the peers at school, it's not the end of the world. As well as that, these kids will have a common interest and won't know about the social cliques that your child has at school, nor will the other child, so it's a win-win situation. Sometimes for parents, it can be easy to criticise and judge your child's friends and social groups because you can see their shortcomings and potential for problems. Unfortunately, you can't put an old head on young shoulders. So it's up to your child to discern what constitutes a good friend or not. The problem is that kids are at school for 40 weeks or so a year, so they spend a lot of time around their peers. That's why it's very important that when your child is sharing with you the story of their social upset, you don't criticise the friend or be disparaging, because chances are next week they'll be friends again and your child will remember that you don't like Jessica. And that could become a barrier between you and the future. It's important to reinforce to your child that friendships can come and go, and how it's the natural way of things. As an example, ask them about what happened to some friends they had in the past and explain how it's the same for everybody, even you, and that moving in and out of interpersonal relationships is an important and inevitable part of growing up. Obviously, if your child's having ongoing issues with their friends, you'll need to keep talking about the concept of what friendship actually is and how true friends behave. Try helping them to distinguish the difference between friends and acquaintances. In my work with kids, I've noticed how many kids brag about how many friends or followers they have on social media platforms such as Facebook and Instagram. I feel they lose sight on what real friends are. A child can think if someone unlikes them on Facebook, it means that they've really lost a friend, not an acquaintance. If your child's having ongoing problems and difficult relations with their peers, it's important to coach them to not treat the others in the group in the way in which they've been treated. Reinforce the principle of being classy and rising above situations that are caused by people being mean and nasty. If your child's having ongoing problems, it might also be prudent to monitor their online relationships. If there are problems though, journal the posts, as we discussed in Lesson 1. If you detect some negative posts, comments, or annoying anything online, consider not overreacting by demanding that your child immediately shut down their accounts. Although it's sometimes hard to comprehend, it's important to appreciate how social media is an integral part of life for preteens and teens. So if you make a big fuss and make them shut down their accounts, it won't be helpful for your relationship. So take the softly approach and work together. You may be a coach, confidant, and tactician, but first and foremost, you are the parent, which means taking the unpopular stance and facing the wrath of a petulant and annoyed child and their emotions. When they're upset about a decision or a consequence of their actions, more than likely it'll be you who'll be taking the brunt of their frustrations and giving them yet another lesson about self-control, respect, and treating others in the way that you wish to be treated. Then when they're feeling lonely, vulnerable and isolated from issues that arise from their peer group, it'll be you who has to be there for them to work through the issues that lie beneath the emotions. So in this role, it's important not to throw things back at your child, such as, well, last week you told me to mind my own business, and now today you want to talk about how mean your friends are. I don't know what to think. Keep consistent. Be the stabilising force or the rock in your child's turbulent preteen and soon-to-be teen world, and let go and move on from any hormonal outbursts, and be the sympathetic ear when problems are afoot. Well, it's been another busy lesson, hasn't it? This week we looked at some practical ways to become balanced by utilising the principle of yin and yang. We learned how you can help your child discover a troublemaker's motivation and weakness. We explored how the ego can potentially be either troublemaker number one or your greatest ally. We examined some strategies about coaching those kids who tended to get into trouble due to an overdeveloped need to be at the centre of attention. We looked at what you can do if your child may have the potential to become a troublemaker. We discussed how you can coach your child to develop more friendship. We examined some strategies to help you coach your child to communicate in a positive and effective way to build confidence and self-esteem. We discussed how to help your child appreciate the importance of empathy and how they can develop it. We explored what is the carrot or the stick principle and how you can utilise it to help your child change difficult behaviour. We looked at some practical solutions if your child is struggling with issues such as being excluded. And we had some strategies about how you can teach your child how to compartmentalise their life and friends to help them have some relationship with people who enhance their lives and not detract from it. So this week, your homework is to work with your child to help them to begin to distinguish the concept of ego and the subtext behind people's looks and behaviour. For example, if someone looks stressed out and unfriendly, why could they be like this? Or if someone's eccentric, why would they do whatever they do? Anyway, I'll send you all the details about the assignment tomorrow. Next week, we'll look at some more advanced techniques to help you be safe in your space, such as understanding the concept of face, such as how to gain it and how to lose it, and how that knowledge can be used for dealing with troublemakers. We'll look at how you can use the carrot or stick principle against potential troublemakers, and what is the invisible treatment and how it makes a great tactic for dealing with troublemakers, plus a whole lot more. In the meantime, if you have any comments or questions about today's lesson, please type them into the message box, post them on the Be Safe in Your Space Facebook community, or send me an email. So thanks for being here this evening. I look forward to hearing how you go with the lessons and homework from this week. And I'm just seeing if there's any comments here.